Jaywalking in the UAE is illegal. Jaywalking is defined as crossing the road by foot in areas which are not designated for pedestrian crossing. Jaywalking is punishable by a fine of 400 dirhams and is strictly enforced. Taking photos of others in the UAE can be criminal if it is done either with a criminal intent or in violation of some other criminal laws, such as invasion of privacy, defamation, insult, or other. Taking a photo of your friend, for example, in front of a Burj Khalifa is not criminal unless that photo is then taken and used for criminal purposes. An unmarried couple can buy and own property in the UAE. Both of their names will be reflected in the title deed. Furthermore, it is no longer illegal for an unmarried couple to live together. This is in accordance with the recently amended UAE Penal Code. Emirati men can marry foreign women as long as they are either Muslim, Christian, or Jewish. Some emirates, however, such as Ajman, may have additional requirements to administer such marriages. In general, women married to Emirati men will qualify for UAE nationality after 7 years of marriage, while children born to Emirati fathers will qualify for UAE citizenship at birth.
Ludmila, do you get charged for unused bank accounts?
In most cases, yes, and this is because as part of the banking practices, when you would have opened your bank account, there would have been terms and conditions attached to the opening of the account, which in most cases outline some kind of fixed fees for just having the right or the privilege of having your bank account. So the question is, can I resign from work months into the contract? And the short answer is yes. In the UAE, you can resign at any point in time for any reason, irrespective of how many months into your contract. This is because employment in the UAE is at will, which means no one can force you to work against your will. However, depending on the nature of your employment, there may be some question of compensation. Is unpaid overtime illegal in the UAE? The general rule is the UAE labor law does provide for compensation of overtime. Therefore, working overtime without compensation is technically speaking against the UAE laws. However, for overtime to be payable, there must be specific evidence showing that you were asked to work overtime by your superior. So the question is, can you take your maternity leave and your annual leave together? In theory, yes. And this is because while the timing for maternity leave is rather self-explanatory, with regards to the annual leave, it is subject to the employer's approval. So therefore, if your employer does not mind for you to combine your maternity leave with your annual leave, then in theory and by law, you can do so. Employees who are wishing to file an employment case against a company in the UAE must first file a request for mediation with the relevant licensing authority where the company is based. For free zone employees, it would be the relevant free zone. For mainland companies, it would be the Ministry of Labor. If the mediation is unsuccessful, employees must request the licensing authority to issue what's called a transfer letter to go to court. With that transfer letter, employees can then file a claim with the court either through the typing center or online. Importantly, all documents, including the statement of claim and other attachments, including the transfer letter, must be legally translated into Arabic. The filing fee for employment cases below 100,000 dirhams is waived for employees. For claims that are above 100,000 dirhams, it is 5% of the claimed amount, which is limited at 20,000 dirhams per filing fee. The statute of limitation for employees to file a case against their companies in the UAE is 1 year from the time the cause of action arose. What to do when leaving the UAE? Number 1, if you were employed, make sure to end your employment properly and sign off on all the relevant documents with the company and the relevant authorities. Number 2, cancel your UAE residence visa. If you had dependents, you will have to cancel their residence visas first. Number 3, vacate your property and sign off on all the relevant documents with your landlord, evidencing his or her acceptance of the property and settlement of all outstanding dues. Number 4, make sure that all your utilities have been properly paid and you have received statements of account evidencing the same. Number 5, if you had a car, if you were renting a car, you will need to make sure to return the car and receive the final statement of account from the rental company. If you own the car, you may want to try to sell it before you leave. If you don't, you may want to give somebody the power of attorney to try to sell it while you're gone. Number 6, make sure to settle all your bank accounts and obligations if you're planning to close the bank account. That will involve, among other things, paying for all the outstanding fees, repaying your debt, and more importantly, receiving final statements of account evidencing that the account has been closed. Number 7, if you had any court cases in the UAE, you want to make sure that they're either finalized properly or that someone here in the UAE has a power of attorney to continue to represent you while you're away. And number 8, in general, if you have any other outstanding matters in the UAE, it is important to have somebody in the UAE who you trust to have your power of attorney so that they continue to assist you with your matters while you're away.